What up, fam? Welcome back to my channel. For those that check it out, just me giving my thoughts on different things. It brings me to Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson's suspension has been determined. And of course, there's more public outcry. I was listening yesterday. I heard Mina Grimes, I believe her name. She was saying how this was so troubling and so upsetting. And it's interesting because she's in the media and she knows how these things play out. She knows all about PR and everything else. And I don't know what people expect. Did they expect Deshaun to come out and say all of a sudden I'm guilty? That's ridiculous. She says she's troubled because the Cleveland Browns decided to make Deshaun Watson the face of the franchise. Well, the last time I checked, quarterbacks are the face of the franchise. They didn't decide to make them that. That's just how it goes. That's just what happens in the NFL and how things get promoted. The quarterback is the most prestigious position on the field, and they become the leader and the face of the franchise. Even when they talk about wins and losses for teams, they equate wins and losses with the quarterback. It's his record. He won the game. He lost the game. So they didn't make him the face of the franchise. It just so happens that Deshaun Watson is a quarterback. They needed a franchise quarterback, so he automatically was going to be the face of the franchise. So that was silly. And she also said it's troubling that he got 230 million. Everybody's bothered. And she used the word they rewarded him with 230 million. What I find interesting is the public outcry coming from the women. No one's upset that Deshaun Watson didn't get that the grand jury didn't indict him on criminal charges. No one's not upset that he didn't do jail time, or he's not arrested, or he's not being charged criminally. Everyone's upset because he got paid 230 million, which is very interesting to me, and I think that tells the story of what's going on here in this whole situation. I don't know what happened, and I'm not accusing him of anything, but I'm not saying he didn't do anything. But what I will say is people act like they don't understand what goes on in some of these massage parlors. Hence Robert Kraft. Robert Kraft, in his situation, the owner of the New England Patriots, it's proof that sexual favors do get exchanged for money in some of these places. While you do have a lot of massage places that offer legit services and it's all about health and healing. And actually, I'm a former massage practitioner, and that's exactly what I did. I was all about healing. I understood the power of human touch, and I was very much in tune with it. But I do know that people, it can be a fine line between, physical touch, eroticism, and healing. It could be a fine line between, and actually, the two can merge, and that's a whole nother topic. But I've had women on my massage table rip the drape off and ask me when we're going to have sex because they were being stimulated by the touch. So let's not act like we don't know what goes on in these situations. And with that being said, no one's crying about the New England Patriots, their owner, and why that team wasn't punished, because the personal conduct policy does state that players and owners are to be held to a standard, and the owners are to be held to a higher standard. Now getting to Rich Eisen. Rich Eisen, he decides he wants to try to assassinate Deshaun Watson even further by saying and dissecting every word he said during his press conference. And he's trying to give you guys the meaning of what Deshaun meant when he said what he said. He took the words, "I'm going to take responsibility for my actions." And with that, Rich wants to scope that or shape that into, if he wants to take responsibilities for his actions, then he should be admitting guilt, in so many words. Rich didn't say this verbatim, but this is what he's implying, that how you taking responsibilities for your action, because he's not coming out saying, "I'm responsible for what I did to those women. I apologize and I take full responsibility." That's crazy. LaShawn said, "I'm going to take responsibility for my actions." What I think he meant by that is, I'm going to take responsibility for the choices that I made, seeking massages where I sought out massages from. Like I'm taking responsibility for that choice, for the role I played in that. I don't think um, he's going to come out publicly and say I'm guilty and I did this, that, and the other. So that's crazy. And for Rich Eisen to shape it that way and to try to assume some type of hypocrisy in his statement because he's not coming out saying he did it, I think that's a little unfair and it's silly, and it's just making me really understand these media types even further. Also, what I find interesting is that the judge who initially ruled on Deshaun's suspension for the NFL on behalf of the NFL said it was non-violent sexual assault. That's perplexing to me because I don't understand how assault can be nonviolent. If you look up the word assault, assault is defined by an attack on another person physically. If you look up the word violence, violence also is physically harming another individual. So to have a nonviolent sexual assault, that just doesn't make sense to me. So with that being said, it's just real interesting that the public outcry is about how much money the kid's getting and him, the Cleveland Browns offering him a contract and his suspension and everything else. And another thing, people seem to be concerned of why the NFL is negotiating with Deshaun. I believe Deshaun Watson actually had some leverage, and this is why the NFL decided to negotiate. I do believe he would have been able to sue the NFL because it's a clear hypocrisy when you look at Robert Kraft's situation and his and some of the other people around the league. The NFL, failed to punish the Patriots, but they're running Deshaun Watson through it. So I think with that, if you take that into the court of law, I think the NFL would have gotten exposed a little bit. So instead of going that route, because I do believe the players union and Deshaun Watson's team and lawyers and stuff, probably if they weren't happy with the decision or if they didn't come to terms, I think if the NFL would have just stepped in and dropped a harsh punishment, indefinite suspension, 1 year, whatever, I do believe Deshaun would have sued. This is why the NFL had to negotiate with him and they had to meet somewhere in the middle. But it's just interesting to me that, just the women's public outcry is about his money. And if you look at the timeline of how all this unfolded, to me it still seems like it's always been about money. He told the Houston Texans in January 2021 he no longer wanted to play for them. Some would say he wanted to get out of town because these allegations were coming. But if you remember, during that time, Deshaun was unhappy with the organization because they traded away his number one receiver. He felt like he had no input on them trying to build the team and build the franchise to help put everybody in a better position to win. J.J. Watt asked to be traded. Other players wanted to leave. And there was rumblings about dissatisfaction with how Houston was running their program. And then Deshaun said, I wanted to be traded. Okay, Houston Texans said, we're not trading you. And they were very unhappy with that. We're not moving you. So then they were at a stalemate. 2 months go by in March. Then all of a sudden, Tony Bugsby, the lawyer representing the women in these lawsuits, filed 3 suits against Deshaun Watson, claiming sexual misconduct or sexual assault. Then fast forward to April. Now, initially, it was lawsuits filed. The media got wind. It started coming out in the media that why didn't these women file police complaints? So in April, then they decide to file a police complaint. They didn't do that initially. And no one seems to take offense. And no one is saying, these women are saying that the grand juries, it was like they slapped us in the face. It was like a gut punch when they didn't file criminal charges against them. They only said that about the NFL in Cleveland when they gave Deshaun all that money. Then they said it's like it's a slap in our face. So to me, if you pay attention to all that, it's hard for me not to believe that this whole thing is about money, draining his money in the beginning because he had leverage against Houston where he could afford to sit out and force a trade, so they wanted to really affect his pocket. What better way to affect the pocket after you gave him all that guaranteed money to get some of that and drain some of that money back is to have him go through this legal battle where he was going to spend a lot of his money defending himself and fighting. He would, lose a lot of that money. And then the women, the initial thing was everybody ran for a lawsuit. It was all about suing him as opposed to seeing him criminally charged. And again, what is nonviolent sexual assault? That's crazy to me. Like, I don't understand how something can be an assault and nonviolent. That just don't make sense. That's it. That's my take on that situation. I don't know if he's guilty or not. I don't concern myself. I'm not emotionally invested in that. But let's not act like we don't know what goes on in some of these massage practitioners. I used to be one, and so I know a little bit about what goes on. So with that, y'all have a blessed one, man. Godspeed, and think for yourself. Free your mind, think for yourself. And in the link, I'm gonna drop the link to my book, Trauma, my love letter to the world. Godspeed.